What's up, Hacksters? Welcome to Wednesday. Today we have an interview with Emily Velasco, an awesome maker based in the LA area. Is that right?
That's right, yeah.
And she's been on the channel before with the Lissa Jukebox, a beautiful display that has a number of strange settings for making. Oh my goodness, I'm not doing a good job of describing this, but it was a year ago almost, and it's perfect timing because you've just come out with a new project, The Orb. Why don't you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, right. So the Orb is a synthesizer, and it's not a synthesizer that you play with keys. It doesn't really have any knobs or anything. Like all of the controls are based off an accelerometer. And so this is the Orb.
Ooh.
And it's literally just like a partial sphere, and it's got a speaker. And the only control you really have is an on-off switch, and then how you move it around. This thing started out as a different project of mine, like going back more than a year, where I wanted to make a pendulum that would play noises when you'd swing it. There are these things called harmonographs, if people aren't familiar with them. So harmonograph are these things, and really it's like almost Rube Goldbergian. It's got a bunch of moving like pendulum parts. You have weights that swing around, and it takes a pen and it draws around on a piece of paper. And if you ever played with a spirograph, the things that they draw resemble the spirograph things, sort of. And so you end up swinging this weight around, and it ends up drawing these kind of complex undulating patterns that change and shrink because, you know, friction takes the energy out of the machine after a while. And so the pattern it draws gets smaller and smaller and smaller, but also you get like these harmonics that go on. And so the pattern changes and they look really cool. And I kind of want to build one, but I don't have room for one. But I had thought like, maybe I can make a harmonograph for sound. And so as the thing would swing around, it would change the sounds it would play.
Wow.
And I still want to try to do that at some point, but one, I don't really have room for that. And two, I kind of experimented around a little bit with using an accelerometer and an Arduino and making the whole thing into a pendulum that would swing. And it didn't really behave the way I wanted it to. And so I gave up on that project for a while, but I still really wanted to do something with the idea of having a synthesizer that kind of rolls around or swings around like a pendulum, and that's what controls it. And so I had an epiphany one day because I have this dumb little toy for my cat. It's this little egg thing, right? And I think like back in the 60s or before, there used to be these toys called roly-poly toys or something silly like that. And they're just like these little toys, and you knock the toy over, but it's weighted on the bottom. So then it tilts itself back up. And like, I don't know why that would be fun for kids. That seems like boring, but for cats, like you put treats in it and like the cat knocks it over and like a treat falls out and then it like tilts itself back up. And so like, I guess it's supposed to keep the cat's attention because it has to keep knocking it over and treats keep coming out.
I mean, that would totally work for me with M&Ms or something.
He doesn't like it very much. Yeah, right. You totally could do that. I should make an orb that dispenses candy while it plays music.
Yes.
So I saw him kind of playing around with this thing, and I was like, wait a second, like that thing rocks around, and it's not a pendulum, but it kind of rolls around, and it has that same sort of thing going on as a harmonograph, in that it would kind of tilt over and back and forth until it righted itself all the way. And I was like, okay, I think this is what I need to do for my synthesizer. And so that's how I came up with this thing. It's round on the bottom. It's like a bowl, sort of, but like a bowl, if you make a wooden bowl on a lathe, which is how I made this thing, it'll be flat on the bottom because you want your bowl to sit upright. Like you don't want your cereal like tipping over.
Right.
Round. And then what you just have to do is make sure that your center of gravity, there's some physics to it of like getting your center of gravity in the right spot, like between top and bottom, so that when it's sitting here, it's at its most like lowest energy state. But when it tilts like this, now the center of gravity has raised up and it wants to return itself. And so, so when you put it down and you tilt it, it kind of goes back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, or you can spin it and it'll spin around until it loses energy and then it tips over. Did you have a question?
I do. I have so many questions.
Okay.
Partly, you just mentioned the center of gravity thing, right? So
Yeah.
do you have, is it thicker wood at the bottom? Do you have the electronics balanced really precisely inside?
Right. So I tried, yes and yes to both of those questions. The wood is thicker at the bottom, and I did do my best to get the electronics balanced right. So I had to do a little bit of finagling to fit everything in here the right way, because like the speaker has to be at the top because it's right here behind this grill, and the
Right.
speaker has a lot of mass because it has a big magnet on it, and so that put a lot of the mass at the top, and then I needed to get some mass down below, but I couldn't have too much mass down below, and I have a battery pack in here, and when I
Ooh.
put the battery pack at the very bottom, it was too much and it didn't want to tilt over very well. So I had to put the speaker and then the battery pack and then the board with the Arduino and the amplifier, and when I put it all together, and I set it on the ground, it just went whoop and like tipped all the way over, and so I was like, oh no, it's too top heavy still. And so I needed to put a weight in the bottom, and like randomly, like just completely randomly, a friend of mine had mailed me some bags of tungsten cubes. Yeah. And like, I know he told me why he had them, and I completely forgot. He had some legitimate reason for having tungsten cubes that I've forgotten. But tungsten
You don't
is,
need an excuse to have tungsten cubes. Come
I
on.
know, I think he was doing something with like, I don't know, like X-ray imaging or something, some kind of project. But the nice thing about tungsten is that it is the densest metal that like the average person can get. There's some other ones like osmium, I think, but like it's, I don't know, they're very expensive, like $2,000 a gram. But you can get tungsten for, it's still expensive, but it's a lot cheaper than these other metals, and it's denser than lead. And so
Ah.
I had these cubes just sitting there in a bag, and I was like, oh, you know, they're really dense, so I'm going to be able to pack a lot of weight into a small area, because like space is a real premium inside of here. I don't have a lot of extra room inside. And so I drilled out a hole on the inside, like a cavity, that I could fit these tungsten cubes into. And I just added them one by one and just kept trying, like how it rocked around until I had added enough. And then I was like, okay. And I glued them in, and like now it's pretty well balanced. So
Cool.
yeah,
Pro tip.
yeah.
It's so cool. Like, I feel like if I had tungsten cubes in a project, I would want to put them like front and center or whatever. But like, this is such a good application for them, and it seems like a lot of your projects have this kind of like hidden cool stuff inside. Like, you've made this raccoon synthesizer with like a little raccoon skull inside and stuff.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
many cool little surprises.
Well, I have probably a few hundred more of those cubes, so I should do something. And like, here's a little bag of them right here. They're
Oh,
just,
cool.
yeah. I have no idea what I'm going to do with them. They're very hard and they're very dense, and like you can get them. I think they don't melt until like 6,000 degrees Fahrenheit. So they
Whoa.
have like some cool properties, but none that like I particularly need for anything. So I don't know what I'm going to do with them.
Hmm. So I'd love to pull up. You mentioned that you were inspired by this cat toy
Yes.
that is sort of a wibbly wobbly thing.
Yeah. Actually,
Um,
look,
ooh,
I got it
yeah.
right here. I forgot it was sitting right here.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
See the treats come out that
They
little
can't get
hole.
their little paws in there unless they
Yeah,
like
exactly.
mess with it. Ah, I can see that being fascinating. Yeah, and on the blog, I think Cameron described it as like a weeble wobble. Do you know the weeble or weebles? It's like the weebles wobble, but they don't fall down. Believe it or not, they actually did manage to entertain children with this concept, and they didn't even put treats inside. So, you know, apparently cats require more entertainment than human children, but you know, maybe we already knew that.
Yeah.
But you've just published a video about this project. Oh yeah, really quick. Here is our previous interview. You can check it out from about a year ago about the Lissa Jukebox. I'll put the link in the description of this video, as well as a link to this video about the orb. And in the description, you say that A, you made it on a lathe, which you already mentioned, and it's awesome. And B, that it's powered by an Arduino, I believe an Arduino Nano, and the Mozzie Audio Synthesis Library. Do you want to tell us a little bit about the tech?
Yeah, sure. So I've used Arduino Nanos in a lot of my projects before, and really I should say like Arduino Nano knockoffs, because you can get like, I don't know, like 20 of them for like $30 or something ridiculous like that. And they're small, you know, it's like a stick of gum. and they have very low power consumption. So I like to use them because they're compact and they're cheap. And the easiest way to do like complicated sounds on an Arduino Nano is using the Mozzie library. So a Nano or any Arduino will make those kind of like video game sounds, those 8-bit sounds. You can do those, right? Because those sounds are just, they're made by turning a pin high and low and high and low. And if you turn it high and low fast enough, you get a square wave, and you get these square wave tones that you're familiar from old video games. And that's cool. And that's like, you know, if you're making an Atari Punk console, that's how it's going to sound. But sometimes I want like a little bit more of a rich sound to my projects. And so someone, I don't know what his actual name is. He goes by Mr. Sensorium, developed the Mozzie library some years ago. Like, I don't think that it's even that much of an active project anymore. His website is still up, but I don't see a lot of people using Mozzie anymore. But what it does is it kind of fakes more complex sounds by doing something called FM synthesis. So it's still doing that, like, because the Arduino cannot put out analog signals. Like, if your stereo, it puts out like a varying level of signal to make sine waves and to make people's voices and all this stuff, right? But your Arduino can't do that. It's just on or off.
Right.
But Mozzie turns it on and off like really fast and like with different pulse width modulation. And so it's able to kind of fake sounds. And it's sort of like, you know, if you're familiar with like PWM control of a light, how you can dim like an LED by making it blink on and off really, really fast.
Right.
And it's too fast for your eye to see it blinking on and off, so it just looks like it's dimmer. Like, it's sort of similar with FM synthesis in that it's doing all this on and off so quickly that your ear can't really tell that it's a square wave. And that's not like it's not the most accurate description, but like in a real simple sense, that's what's going on. And so Mozzie it's really cool software for the Nano, and it'll run on any Arduino.
Cool.
Yeah, so like people should play with it. It's fun. It would be cool to have more people messing around with it. The documentation isn't super great just because no one seems to be using it a whole lot now. But you can make so many neat sounds with it. And it's amazing how much of a wide tapestry of sounds you can get out of an Arduino using that library. So that's what I like to use in my projects. It can do things like generate tones, which is what I have in this project, or it can even record, like you can record short samples of, like, you could be like, "Hi, I'm Alex," and then like load it into an Arduino, and you can play it back through the Arduino.
With
like,
Mozzie?
Yeah, totally.
Cool.
The only limitation is that there's not a ton of memory in an Arduino. You get like maybe 2-3 seconds if you turn like your sample rate really way down. You get like really short snippets. But if you put that into like a synthesizer kind of thing, not so much like I want to record myself talking, but you could say, "Hi, I'm Alex," and then you could make a synthesizer where it plays it and it distorts it, and you could have your own voice coming out of something. So it's really cool, and I really would like to see more people playing with Mozzie because it's fun.
That sounds rad. I've been playing around a bit with a teensy audio library, and that's like, it's way sort of more heavy. This seems like a really lightweight thing. Like, you only need the Arduino and like a speaker and stuff, right?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, absolutely. The coding. So I only have looked at the teensy library a little bit, and it seems a lot easier to put together. You need more hardware, like you mentioned.
Yeah, it's a balance.
Yeah, but the creating of sound is a lot easier. Like in Mozzie, like if you look at a Mozzie sketch and you've never looked at a Mozzie sketch before, they're really confusing because like they have to do a lot of tricks to like squeeze the sounds out of the Arduino. And so there's a lot of things in there that like are kind of unique to the Mozzie library. And so like I don't even understand some of the stuff still. And sometimes my projects behave in ways I don't really get. And I just sort of trial and error them until they work, but I didn't do anything scientific to get them there. Like I don't really have knowledge of what I've done. I just fumble around until it works because some of the parts of Mozzie are just odd. So
I mean, I feel like you probably like that though. Not necessarily knowing exactly what the project is going to do or like how the thing works, but like you can get the results that you want. Still
yeah,
kind of playing with it.
absolutely. And when I started playing with Mozzie, I was really frustrated because like it just I write a sketch and then it would play no sound at all, or it would just be making some horrible buzz that like didn't do anything. It would just be sort of screeching and I couldn't control it. And it took me a long time to get to a point where I can like make some things behave mostly like I want to. So yeah, it's a trade-off for sure. And I do have a teensy that I want to play with that teensy library. So one of these days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I haven't had a chance to actually look at your video yet, and I was just scrolling through it, and there's so much good stuff here about how you were like turning the bowl part on the lathe, and like polishing it up, which is, you know, always wonderful to watch. And then like also, I didn't realize that you fabricated this top part also manually. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it looks so polished, and I guess, you know, drill presses and whatnot, but like, look at that. It like
Yeah.
fits so perfectly together, and it really looks like it was almost, you know, plasma cut or something. Oh, cool. It's so
Yeah.
good.
I don't have a CNC because they're expensive, and I really don't have room for one. So I had to do this all by hand, and so there was a lot of like marking and measuring and like punching all the spots for the holes and drilling all the holes by hand, and I had to make a jig to cut out that disc so that it would be like a good circle. Like I cut it
Wow.
close on my bandsaw, but it needs to be like a real nice, precise circle.
Uh-huh.
So I had to make that jig for my disc sander so I could like put it in there and turn it
Huh.
and just keep turning it and rotating it until it just got shaved all the way down into a nice, perfect circle.
It came
And
out looking so perfect.
yeah, it came out really good. I was really happy with how that jig worked. It's sort of a variation on like there's if you ever use a router, you can cut circles with a circle cutting jig, and you can do it on a table saw. But I had never done that on a disc sander before, and I had never done it with metal before. I cut circles out of wood on my bandsaw using sort of a similar idea, but I kind of threw that jig together specifically for this project, and it worked really well. So I was super happy about that.
Rad. Old school fabrication techniques. That's so rad. Uh, Speaking of old school, it almost looks like there's some new school stuff in here too. Is this a 3D printed frame for the electronics here?
Yeah, actually. Um, I didn't really know how I was going to put all this together. And so again, this was kind of where it came into like getting things balanced well. And so I think that's like version 5 of those brackets, because I needed everything to fit inside without being in each other's way and having like the weight balanced right. So like the easiest way to do that is to just like design something, like CAD something up with some CAD software and print it. And then like, does it work? Like, no, like change it a little bit in software and then print another one. And so, yeah, those are 2 brackets and they hold everything. They're just mounted to the back of that plate. And so the whole thing slides out of the wooden orb. It just pulls out and you have the front panel, and all the battery and all the electronics and the speaker and everything are just attached to the back of the panel.
Wow, that's so pro.
Yeah.
Speaking of the back of the panel, the finish on the back of there is also really pretty. Is that just like how it ended up after you were fabricating it?
Yeah, that was
Cool.
there's a scrap metal place down the road from me, and I went there looking for some aluminum for a different project, and I bought that piece because it was cheap. And I think it might have been a sign, like a road sign or something at some point,
Oh.
but most of like whatever had been on there had worn off. So like one side was bare metal and the other side had some kind of like, I don't know, it's not paint, it's some kind of film that was applied to it.
Huh.
And it's all kind of crackled from having been out in the sun. And so I just sanded it until it was smoothish. And so that's all you see there is like, there's some bare metal parts because that's where it had peeled off from being in the sun. And then there's like, it was 2 layers. There was black underneath and white on top. And I just sanded it so that it wouldn't have any high spots. And that's how it ended
It's
up.
really cool that way. I can see it
Yeah.
being reversible almost.
Yeah, I kind of would like to do a project where I make use of that sort of visual texture, because it does look really cool. And I might have to find a way to implement that and use that in something.
So with your 3D printing, what is your CAD software of choice?
I use Onshape. It's if people have used SolidWorks, it'll be familiar to them. Like there's a lot of controls that are different, but it's fundamentally very similar to SolidWorks, and it's free, and so I use it. I've been meaning to learn Fusion 360 for a couple of years, and I've just been lazy because like I already know how to use Onshape, and it's like it gets really hard to get yourself motivated to learn a whole new software suite when you already can do most of what you want in one.
Yeah.
It's really oriented towards CAD stuff, so it's not going to be like if you like using Fusion 360 for like doing artistic stuff, like making models, like building figures, you know, more organic things, like it's not good for that. It's good for like designing machine parts, and it works really well for that. And mostly I use it for like making enclosures for projects and making brackets for holding things. So
Yeah.
it works really well for that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's really quick. You can just whip it up and you can have it anywhere.
Yeah.
Two more questions for you. First up, in the end of your video, you have this wonderful demo where you're like spinning it around and like letting it wobble and stuff. Can you give us a quick demo of what this thing sounds like? I realize it probably won't be as good because, you know, it's all over like, you know, the computer speakers and whatever, but I would love to hear it.
Sure. All right. So like I said before, there's really only one like user control here, and it's the on-off switch. And I'll turn it on, then I'll just sort of move it around.
I wonder what this evokes to different people. To me, it almost sounds like there's some like machine ghosts trapped in there.
Yeah.
Does it evoke anything to you?
A lot of frustrating memories of making it work. You know, I guess it kind of reminds me a little bit of a theremin, and like I wasn't planning on that when I started putting it together, but now it sort of feels like almost like a mechanical theremin.
Right.
In a way, what I've heard from a lot of people, I've gotten a lot of comments from people that say it reminds them of 1960 sci-fi.
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah, like the traction beams, or just like the theme music. Like I've had a few people mention it reminds them of Doctor Who, like the old Doctor Who theme song.
Right.
So it's got that going on, which
was a theremin, right? I think there was a theremin in there.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, exactly that. Yeah, so I don't know. I guess it's sort of like a weird theremin that you hold in your hands and shake around, which is kind of fun.
Cool, yeah. I have a housemate who plays the theremin, and apparently he's gotten overexcited and kind of like yanked the antenna off the theremin multiple times during performances. So this looks a little bit more like it would hold up to that kind of abuse. You know, you could kind of toss it around.
Yeah.
Yank it every which way. It's got no prongs on it to like pull off unless you're really determined.
True. No, you have to be careful, because sometimes I've gotten like a little too enthusiastic in shaking it, and it's very smooth, and I've almost like accidentally flying. So
collateral damage.
Because I don't want it to go flying across the room. I don't think it will survive. So
that's a great point. Caution is recommended.
Yeah.
So yeah, you mentioned that you really like the Mozzie library, but that there's not a ton of documentation around it. And so I was wondering if you're planning to publish your own work around the orb for the Mozzie library.
Yeah, actually. So so it's already on my GitHub. The code is up there. And there's also a really hastily drawn wiring diagram / schematic. Like I had already spent 18 hours editing the video, and I was over it. So usually I try to do a good job with my schematics. The schematic is accurate, but like I just kind of drew it in like Microsoft Paint basically. So it looks like crap, but it's there. So if people want to go to my GitHub, it's github.com/Emily Velasco, or if they watch the video, there's links in the video where they can get all that information as well.
Oh, perfect. Let me pull that up again real quick. So we are on YouTube, and it is The Orb. It's under Emily's Electric Oddities. Yeah. And, oh yeah, code and schematic are here. Fantastic. We'll put, again, the link to that in the description, but you'll also have the link to the video, so you can check out all the more intricate workings of how this was put together, and also this sort of like stream of consciousness bunch of video clips and things at the start, which I think looks fun to jump into. Thank you so much for joining us. This is so cool.
Oh, thank you for having me. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I can't wait to see what you make next year.
I know, right?
All right, keep it real. Stay safe.
All right, thanks. You too. Bye.
Bye.